state religion, like the Anglican Church in Great Britain. In the United States, there's a separation of church and state. But there is definitely not a separation of religion and politics. Because
in the United States, for years, though, there were the blue laws that forced even Jewish shopkeepers to keep their shops closed on Sunday, right?
Absolutely.
But of course, no longer.
Absolutely. So you cannot blame the religious parties for promoting their agenda.
So who do you blame?
What you have to ask is, why has the vast majority of Israelis, okay, Palestinian citizens of Israel, Jewish citizens of Israel, who are not Orthodox, some are Reform, some are conservative, some are atheists, some are agnostic, why have they allowed discrimination against citizens of the state if they do not conform to certain kinds of religious dictates?
Who can answer that question?
And I think that is the key question, because in a sense, the fault of what is happening here is really the fault of the major parties who have not had the guts to defy potential coalition partners in the form of religious parties, and have given them a free hand much more than anybody should take.
Gershom, the question is whether the blame lies entirely with the big political parties, or whether it lies with the Israeli public, which has not taken to the streets in its hundreds of thousands to say no more.
Well, there's a couple of issues that arise here. One is, I think, even though this isn't our subject for discussion today, you mentioned at the beginning today that people are focused on the Israeli-Palestinian, Israeli-Arab conflict. And that is always in the background, or maybe in the foreground. As long as that is the issue which defines Israeli politics, almost everything else gets pushed into the background. I think it's striking that during the Oslo years, a number of domestic issues, including the relationship of religion and state, came to the fore. It was sort of a payday loan on peace. We hadn't actually gotten to peace, but people began to feel like they were almost living there, and they could raise these issues. When the Second Intifada began, they got pushed into the background again, and politics became security, peace, war once more. A second question which comes up here is that I think that a large portion of Israeli society, including many members of the large parties, are themselves conflicted. It's the classic situation of the synagogue they don't go to is the Orthodox or the ultra-Orthodox one. They may not keep these things themselves, but they haven't made the effort to define what they want their Jewish identity to be, and they're happy to subcontract it to the religious parties. And in fact, one of the reasons that I favor the separation of religion and state is essentially to send that assignment home to the rest of the public, to force them to have to think about those issues.
But it won't happen until the public cries out for it, will it?
There's a third issue which I think is very, very well hidden here, but very important. The issue has been raised of the role of the religious parties in the coalition. And one of the reasons that small coalition partners can exert that power is the consensus, often not spoken, that Arab-backed parties will not be part of the coalition. Because in order to create a coalition in the Israeli Knesset, you need 61 seats out of the 120 members. But what we do, in fact, what every coalition till today has done, has tried to build that coalition out of 110 members or 112 members. It is much, much more difficult to do that, and that gives much more power to small parties. If the current coalition, for instance, was as willing to consider the membership of the Arab parties as they are of the Shas ultra-Orthodox party, the demands that Shas could make would go down. So the relationship of the majority to the Arab or Palestinian minority and the issue of freedom of religion are subtly but very, very intrinsically connected.
Jafar, you're stuck in the middle of this.
Yes, I didn't know that we are invited to be part of the coalition. Actually, in '99, for the first time, 95 of the Palestinian Arab community inside Israel voted for Barak, and the majority of the Russian immigration that came here voted for Barak. They gave him both communities gave him the majority, and it was two conditions: one peace and the other one secular government. The first thing that Barak did after the election is to create government with Shas. He refused to invite the Arab political parties to be part of his coalition. And this is not to blame the religious parties, not to blame Shas. It's to blame the liberal Jews, that they don't know what they want. If they want to keep talks and to keep flirting with inside between Jews themselves without taking care and looking at what are the core issues, not only in peace, but also in social agenda and secular agenda. You know, you think that I didn't have problem with my priest at the church when I went, and he told me, why you come to the church now? He also thought that I should go to secular ceremony and not to a religious seminar. And the internal, you know what will happen once? You know, think about Shas and the Islamic movement creating some kind of coalition inside the Knesset about the future, how the scene will look like, also in the Arab community.
So let's say the Arab citizens of Israel basically have been disenfranchised by successive Israeli governments in the sense that they've never been taken into the government. They've gotten to Knesset, but not to the government. But what about in your personal life? Do you sense something in your community that's similar to what Nomi described, in the sense that in terms of your life cycle events, birth, marriage, conversion, divorce, are you also imprisoned, as it were, by an ultra-Orthodox Christian or Muslim minority?
No, the fact that the scene is controlled by Jews, so then the margin you have the Christians.
But you also have religious courts in the Arab community, right?
Yeah, but it was big struggle of the secular movement inside the Arab community with the support with the Jewish secular movement to make sure that it's possible to access
and did you
family
succeed?
courts. Yes, it was a coalition, it was amazing coalition. Shas and Yahdut HaTorah, together with the Islamic members of the Knesset, were together against secular Arabs and Jews that were fighting for family laws.
Sounds like the Messiah is about to arrive.
Yeah, it will be. Actually, it will be when we will secure equality in the basic laws, not the court decisions, but we'll secure equality as a value. When we will talk about equality as a value, you know, like even when religious parties don't like to hear about it.
Rabbi Regev, if we're talking about people who are disenfranchised, I think you're a member of the club, as are all members of Reform and conservative and reconstructionist Jewish streams here in Israel. Basically, the bottom line, and I know this is a pedestrian way of explaining it, but our viewers need to know, is you're not recognized. Your authority isn't recognized. You're not allowed to perform conversions that are recognized by the chief rabbinate of Israel, if I've got it right. In fact, even people who sometimes are converted by Reform and conservative rabbis overseas have a tough time when they come over here getting their Judaism accepted and recognized in Israel. Given that situation, given the fact that you are perhaps in a majority in the population, but definitely in a political minority in terms of religious clout, what do you do? How do you begin changing the situation? What's your suggestion?
Well, if I may, let me just make two very brief observations about what we heard. One, I think that what Jaffa said gives us a clue as to let's not put our eggs in the Arab political basket. Namely, clearly the alliance of the fundamentalist Muslims and the fundamentalist religious Jewish political groupings is not necessarily a solution to the church-state unholy alliance. Two, the irony is, and our listeners I hope will appreciate it, the irony is that Jaffer as a Christian enjoys a far greater measure of religious freedom than I as a Reformed Jew.
Why? Because no one cares about what they do?
No, because by law in Israel, all Christian denominations enjoy full autonomy in all religious matters. It is in the Jewish community where only Orthodox